Would you like to read us a section from your book?
I could, but I really hate reading my work. But I
Hey, come
could.
on, Shandana.
I do. I really hate reading it.
Do it regardless.
So what happens is when I start reading, it's like a train leaving a station. I start speed and it becomes the pace gum. So I will try to
Okay.
read slowly. So
I'm sure we will not hate it, even if you hate it.
okay. I think I'll read from the beginning, chapter 1 of Survival Tips for Lunatics. I woke up to silence. This was odd because I generally wake up to my little brother Timmy screaming for his breakfast. I don't mean that he screams for his breakfast in the way that artists once used to sing for their supper. I mean, he screams till he gets breakfast. But that morning, I woke up and there was silence. I shook Timmy off me. He clings like a limpet when he's asleep. Limpets are considered pests in other places. It's only a matter of time till someone invents a limpet spray if they haven't already. At first, I assumed it was quiet because Timmy was still asleep. Then I realized we weren't alone in our bedroom at a home in Karachi as we usually were. We were in a tent at a remote national park, downwind from the largest mud volcano in South Asia,
Nice.
upstream from all manners of wildlife, adjacent to apparently other adult campers. Sure, the volcano was mostly dormant, and the wildlife smart enough to keep its distance from a beast as dangerous as the one I was sharing a tent with, and adults seem more zombie like in the mornings than at any other point in the day. Still, there was something about that silence. It was unnatural. This is a startling revelation to have in the midst of nature. I poked my head out of the tent, hoping that I had just woken a little earlier than the others, and that the sound of our tent zipper would draw others out of theirs to restart the fire and bang pots and pans and eggs together. But there were no other tents. There were no four-wheel drives. There were no parents or devoted uncles and aunts. There was just our tent, the landscape, and Timmy and I alone in the middle of it. But I should start at the beginning. It started when my parents decided to take us camping in Hingol National Park. This is Pakistan's largest wildlife reserve. It is in Balochistan, which is Pakistan's largest province. Most people don't go to Balochistan because there is lots of trouble there. Trouble is the word my parents use when they don't want Timmy and me to know they are talking about killing and burning. If you ask me, that's pretty stupid considering they taught us to read even before we started school. Mom and dad said they wanted to take us camping because always being shut up in an apartment in Karachi was no life for kids. They said we needed to sleep under the stars and sit by a fire and listen to stories like they had when they were children and went camping with their parents and their friends. I pointed out that we slept under the stars every time the electricity went, and we had to drag our mattresses onto the balcony when the inverter ran out, and that we heard stories all the time from Timmy when he did something bad and then invented a ridiculous explanation for how it happened. And I could go on, but should I?
I like that you're doing that little thing, na? Hingol National Park, largest park, and you're doing a little bit of documentary bit also. I
साथ साथ
remember.
सिखा भी रही हूँ.
साथ साथ सिखा भी रही है. It's nice.
Yeah. I mean, I think मेरे लिए actually ये किताब काफी शर्म की बात है that me as a privileged Pakistani Karachiite was able to write this book and to have this book celebrated and read. I mean, I know that it's on reading lists for certain schools. But the people who actually live these lives, they don't necessarily get to speak for themselves. Yeah. So I think that I need to acknowledge that I was able to do this because of my privilege.
Right. Shandana, before we let you go, I'd like to get some book recommendations from you, some current books and some all-time favorites.
Current, what year is it? 2021, correct?
Wait,
so I read
last 5-7 years. Recent.
So yeah, recently. So I have read. I read a really brilliant novel called "The Discomfort of Evening," by a Dutch writer, Marieke Reinfeldt. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. "The Discomfort of Evening," which blew my mind. It was absolutely brilliant. Originally written in Dutch and then translated into English. So that would be one recommendation: "The Discomfort of Evening." And that also, we started out. We were talking about alienation and isolation.
Yeah.
And that is so that book is the same theme, and it has a young protagonist. but it's not a book that you would want to read to a child again unless you really wanted to mess with that child's head. But it's absolutely brilliant. Apart from that, I also read Strange Weather in Tokyo.
Okay.
It was by a Japanese writer, Hiromi. Sorry, I don't remember the last name. But again,
Also a translation?
Okay. Also a translation into English, which was really brilliant. It's a love story, and after a long time, I read a love story that moved me. You know, the sort of love story where you really want them to have that moment of happiness. So, dil khush ho gaya.
Nice.
Yeah. Apart from that, I read a really excellent translation of a Khalida Hassan short story called The Sea by, I think, again, a younger Pakistani translator called Heather Shahbaz, and I think a translation prize in India as well. And it was a really brilliant translation, and I really enjoyed that. And it was sort of my first introduction to Khalida Hassan. Because मैं उर्दू बहुत कम पढ़ती हूँ, I only started reading, and I haven't found a good translation of or a collection of her work yet, but I can't wait because I think she was phenomenal. And I was so excited by the story and what she was doing with the short story form that I can't wait for somebody to translate her so that, you know, jahils like me, padhe likhe jahils like me can kya kehte hain, idhar ke na udhar ke, can read more of her, but she was so brilliant.
नहीं उधर के तो है, इधर के नहीं है तो
नहीं उधर के भी नहीं है, हम कहीं के नहीं है. And I think that's okay, you know, because Ayesha, we are in the middle of an evolutionary leap, and this happened in India 2-3 decades ago, which is when the Indian English was accepted as fully indigenous. I think we Pakistanis, abhi hame thoda ajeeb lag raha hai, but hopefully 20 years time, we will be seen as a first generation of Pakistani English language writers who are actually writing in Pakistani English, which is different from the English of America or Europe. You know, I am an indigenous Pakistani writer. So my language.
From the Indian English also?
No, it's very similar.
Similar.
It is very similar. I mean, look, we kind of have to accept the fact that, you know, partition didn't happen in 1947, which is not that long ago. I mean, my father was Indian. He was 19 when partition happened, right? So I lay claim to that heritage without any fear or without any shame. That is also my heritage. And I belong to a tradition that transcends the borders that are now being imposed on me. So even Ruqayya Sakhawat Hussain, the Bangladeshi science fiction writer who wrote, you know, I mean, ye bhi hamari lineage hai, right? This is my lineage, not, you know, necessarily Jane Austen or Virginia Woolf.
Or, sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And your all-time favorites, Shandana?
Gosh, so my all-time favorites. So I love Dune, Frank Herbert. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It never fails to enthrall me or comfort me or capture me. Abhi uski film adaptation nikli hai. So I'm one of those annoying people who judges people by whether they've read the book before they've seen the movie. And then I get very irritated when people who haven't read the book see the movie and then say, oh, this must be a good book. And I get really mad. But I love the Dune books. I think writing...
Sorry, can you say the name of the book again? I think you were breaking out a little.
Dune by Frank Herbert.
Dune, okay.
Yeah. So it's a work of, what's the word? Let's say speculative fiction, because it is fantastical and also science fiction. It is basically about ecology, philosophy, religion, and culture.
Nice.
And it is very strongly informed by Islam.
Okay.
And desert cultures and colonialism. And it is absolutely mesmerizing. And it blew my mind the first time I read it because it was so unconventional. Yeah. So yes.
I'm ashamed to say I haven't even heard of it.
Yeah, most people haven't. I'm not judging you, Ayesha, I promise.
I'm confessing right up.
अच्छा हुआ खुद बता दिया ये भी मुझे बाद में पता चला. But yeah, so Dune and also Pratchett. I love everything by Terry Pratchett. He was a British writer, fantasy writer again. So for me, the highest form of writing is fantasy writing.
Okay.
So I think literary fiction is the lowest form of writing. And fantasy is the highest form of writing. And I actually, my approach is that I have been trying to get better with each book so that one day I dare to write a good fantasy story.
And is that because that transports the reader?
Yeah, that's an actual story. It's a complete world. It's not, you know, yeah. But I love fantasies. And Terry Pratchett is, you read a Terry Pratchett book and you walk away from it feeling good. And you walk away from it happy to be alive, and you are filled with love for all creation, and you're smiling.
Nice.
And it's about the stuff of life itself, which is quite dark and horrific. But he's a humorist. He was a humorist. Sorry, he died. And yeah, so humor is very important to me. And I think those would be my all-time favorites. I also was a huge fan of Daphne du Maurier, the atmospherics.
Okay.
Yeah, she was fantastic and so underrated as a writer again.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are something to the top of my head.
Thank you so
Manto,
much.
sorry, I can't not say Manto. Yeah, but again, English translation. So
yeah.
But
मंटो की तो है translation की बड़ी सी किताब है.
Exactly. वो सबको पढ़नी चाहिए.
वो सबकी
yeah. I think now they've started, but still, it should be taught in schools rather than the stuff we actually have on our curriculum. Why isn't Manto on our curriculum? Why isn't Khalida Hassan on our curriculum?
Yeah. Interesting. So thank you for this discussion and for your candid conversation, Shandana. And thank you for your time. So
my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ayesha. It was good talking to you.
You too. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.